Today on Xplay, we review Trek to Yomi, and I think that means we have a film school degree now. Plus, we get a sneak peek at Demon Throttle, the new game that looks like it came out of 1987. And finally, we dive into the exciting world of special edition gaming with limited run games. Now we finally have stuff to display on our shelf alongside our empty Taco Bell party packs. Sodium warning incoming. It's game time.
Hello and welcome to Xplay.
We love black and white samurai films.
And also black and white samurai games. Ghost of Tsushima is one of the best games we played of this generation and maybe the last few generations.
Now take that wide scope and narrow it to only 2 dimensions, give or take.
Like Tsushima, Trek to Yomi is a love letter to classic samurai cinema.
Just much smaller.
Less of a letter and more of a post-it note.
But does Trek to Yomi get us where we're going?
Check out our review to find out.
Hokage is downstairs right now for that Trek to Yomi review.
Did you just say that TBH is downstairs doing the Trek to Yomi review?
Trek to Yomi review, yeah.
What a dick. He knows I beat Sonic Colors 69 times. That review needs me. I'd make it so much more vibrant. Get the out of my way, Jefferson.
I'm not even sure you want anymore.
Trek to Yomi is the latest offering from Flying Wild Hog, the Poland-based studio behind titles such as Shadow Warrior, Hard Reset, and the upcoming Evil West. Seeing as they have a thing for shooters, I was curious to see how they'd handle a samurai-themed game. I'm here to report that Flying Hog proved that hogs aren't the only things flying because they knocked this game out of the park. Trek to Yomi is a coming-of-age story where in it our protagonist experiences tragedy at an early age. This heartache sets him on a path to avenge his clan as an adult. This man took a page straight out of the book of Sasuke. Well, minus the curse mark, joining a terrorist organization and committing treason, but I swear it's close. Although our hero's motivations aren't the most original, the way in which this game chooses to deliver its narrative is. Trek to Yomi is a tale told completely in black and white. At first glance, you would think that limits this game, but it's quite the opposite. By the time I completed this game's prologue, I understood why the developers chose this art style. Leaving things black and white when used correctly can sometimes convey tone and emotion better than color ever could. The use of contrast throughout the game, the deep blacks and the rich lighting help convey the sense of urgency this tale has. There's often 1v1 duels that cast deep shadows over each person that makes it feel like you're living out an old samurai film. This game's presentation does a great job of tapping into your inner child, making you feel like a badass because who didn't want to be a samurai as a kid? The story starts off fairly straightforward. You think you know where it's going, and then it takes a twist that was cool, but I won't spoil that. Instead, I'll mention the voice acting. It's all in Japanese. The VO is delivered in a manner that's so compelling that you'll remain engaged throughout this adventure. If you consume anime or any other form of Japanese media regularly, you'll feel right at home. But for those of you who don't, be prepared to read subtitles. Normally I prefer my native tongue of English, but the Japanese in this game just works. It gives the game that extra sense of authenticity alongside the visual presentation. My only nitpick would be that sometimes it's hard to focus on the dialogue when you're fighting for your life against a bunch of enemies. I was never overwhelmed, it was more so of a minor inconvenience, but still worth noting because I didn't want to miss anything this world had to offer. I think what makes up for this shortfalling is you do have to make tough decisions a few times throughout the story that affect your path, so I think there's some replayability here. The final piece that completes this comfort pie is the sound design. Everything from the environmental noises to the swords colliding and the background music are great. This game's ability to immerse you into the world is its largest selling point.
Hey! I just finished listening to Logic's whole discography. I'm talking Bobby Tarantino. I'm talking Bobby Tarantino 2. I'm talking Bobby Tarantino 3. And you know what? I think I'm ready for this review to Trek to Yomi now.
Joe, I know you did not just hop your ass on set and say you feel capable of reviewing Trek to Yomi because you know all the songs from the world's #1 ranked half-black, half-white rapper.
I mean, it depends. If you think that all that extensive research I did made me prepared to do this review, then yeah, I did listen to Logic for that reason. If not, I don't think I said anything at all.
Joe, if you don't get your Bobby biracial blasting ass out of my face.
I don't have to go anywhere, Hokage. You need to learn that not everything is black and white. There's a gray area.
I'm not gonna lie, dude, you're getting on my nerves. Can we get security up in here to take him away?
You just have your own security? You're the black and white cop? Talk about committing to a bit.
Let's talk about the gameplay. Trek to Yomi is a 2D.5 action-adventure game. It's mostly played on a 2D plane with the option to make turns in and out of the environment. You can take the straight and narrow path, but if you choose to explore these nooks and crannies, you're rewarded with upgrades for your arsenal, stamina boosts, as well as items to provide lore and more context to the world. My favorite reward for exploring is the environmental hazards sprinkled throughout the game. The straight path always leads to you being jumped by enemies, but if you take your time, you'll often find contraptions enemies are standing directly under. Find the button that needs to be pressed, and you could pull off a nice AoE and easily clear a path to victory. This path also leads to extra dialogue as well. If you don't run directly into fights, sometimes you'll catch your enemies with their guard down, and they'll speak more candidly. These bonus conversations provide more insight into the mind frame of your opposition. Is it absolutely necessary to hear this stuff? No. But it's a nice little extra nugget for all those gamers out there that love extracting as much value out of their purchase as possible. Combat remains on a 2D plane. Being that this is a samurai game, it's only natural that your default weapon is a sword. If it wasn't, then this game would be illegal. Jokes aside, sword combat is dope because it's realistic in the sense that 1 or 2 hits and the enemy could die. Combat doesn't always go this way, but I love having that sense of danger to it. Since you're operating on a 2D plane, timing and footsies is the name of the game. The other layer of the challenge stems from the fact that your enemies spawn in front and behind you. I played on PC with an Xbox controller, so what you had to do is tap the A button. Once you tap the A button, it would change the direction in which you look to help you deal with the fact that you're being jumped from the front and behind. But that's just the basics. The katana is the most popular weapon showcased in samurai media, and can you blame them? It's cool to give a hater a haircut when they ain't acting right. The reality is, though, that swords aren't all these warriors used. They used a wide array of weapons to defend their honor. Hell, in Naruto, the samurai focused their chakra into the blades before giving their enemy the tip. All right, look, I know the samurai in Naruto aren't historically accurate, and nor do I care whether or not they are. I just wanted an excuse to make a chakra-induced just the tip joke because I'm immature. Sue me. Seriously, you get a bunch of tools at your disposal to handle your foes. The game gives you options such as a bow, throwing knives, and a gun to attack from a distance. You also have the rolling mechanic to close the gap on enemies who use longer weapons like spears. I love how the game introduces new mechanics. As you move closer to your objective, in each level you'll run into enemies you've never seen before. From there, the game will slow down and teach you how to counter them with a new tool. And speaking of tools, I forgot to mention the tools that are given to you for your katana. Outside of the basic swipes, you unlock various combos throughout your journey. Some are just for extra style and flair, but some are absolutely necessary for defeating certain enemy types. One of my favorite early examples is you run into armored bandits who can't be damaged by body shots, so you have to memorize the proper button combination to make your hero stab them in the face for an instant kill. If you like to parry, the option for that is here as well. When enemies try to scalp you, time the parry button right, and you'll open the enemy up for heavy damage or sometimes an instant kill. Combat peaks during boss fights. Everything around you ceases and you're tossed into these intense 1v1 duels where your opponent has a unique moveset, they hit harder, and you can't run. Your reflexes are tested especially because a lot of the bosses force you to master changing directions and parrying. When you take down a boss, you feel like a total badass because there's no gimmicks in these fights. Once again, this is a footsies and timing game that will test your nerves from time to time. If you notice though, I said from time to time, and it's a reason for that. I have some critiques about Trek to Yomi. The first of which is that the pacing is a little off. The game is far too easy for the most part. Then at the very end, there's a crazy difficulty spike. There's a stamina bar in this game, and I never had to manage my stamina until like the last hour of the game. I personally don't like when games do this. I think they could have done a better job at ramping things up to get you better prepared for that final stretch. I literally was button mashing my way through 90% of the game. Then I hit a wall and I had to sit up and try extra hard. It's always weird going from playing something mindlessly to sweating. You're also going to run into puzzles, mostly in the back half of the game. They're there to shake up the pace of the game, but honestly, they didn't add much. Majority of the puzzles come down to matching symbols from a rock to your dial, then it opens up a pathway. The only time I got a little stumped is when I ran into the one puzzle that wasn't like the rest. But it didn't take long for me to figure out it was just another memory game. These puzzles weren't terrible, but they did feel like an afterthought. That being said, Trek to Yomi is a great game with some surprising plot twists that'll take you on a mental trip. I believe most should experience this game if they have the means. The story's engaging, the action is solid, plus Flying Hawk has created an intoxicating world with its dark, gritty use of monochrome and the ominous sound design. And for that reason, we here at Xplay give Trek to Yomi a 4 out of 5.
Trek to Yomi harkens back to a bygone era, both in visuals and gameplay,
which inspired us to ride the nostalgia train another few stops.
We're taking an in-depth look at some of the coolest physical video game special editions around.
Prepare to feel transported back to a time when games came with an instruction booklet right after these messages.
Attack is back, and the critics are raving. Good enough. I've seen worse. Reverse hair loss now with one simple trick. Click here. Catch the show the critics literally won't start talking about. Attack of the Show on G4 Select.
Welcome back to Xplay.
This is your last warning. If you're a collector or have compulsive purchase tendencies, please use caution while watching this next segment.
Limited Run Games is a small retail company obsessed with the physical media of gaming.
And they've opened a brand new hub world for collectors of all sorts.
Gerard locked his credit cards in a gun safe, and he sat down with the folks behind the very cool Limited Run Games.
Check it out.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Xplay. Recently, the good folks at Limited Run Games opened their first retail store in North Carolina. Joining us to discuss the opening of the retail store and all cool things that is Limited Run Games is the CEO of Limited Run Games, Josh Fairhurst, and co-founder Doug Bogart. Guys, thank you for joining us here. We're so happy to have you both to talk about Limited Run Games in your store.
Thank you for having us.
So excited.
So for those of you at home, or for those at home who may not be familiar, could you guys briefly explain what Limited Run Games does?
Sure. We take digital games that are not available in physical form, and we release them in physical form for people that care about owning their games physically. Because there was a surprising amount of people that just did not want to own things digitally, and you probably can't tell from behind me, but I'm one of those people. I love physical stuff. I'm a hoarder. It's unhealthy.
You guys are doing a bunch of great work, not only for letting fans own the games physically, but for video game preservation, which is always a great thing. So how did Limited Run Games start, and what were some of the difficulties that you guys encountered and lessons you've learned in those early years?
It started out of my game development company. So we had a company called Mighty Rabbit Studios that I started after I graduated from college, and we made a game called Saturday Morning RPG. It came out, it did pretty well critically, but it didn't sell super well. We made a lot of really stupid decisions with our business model, and just didn't make enough to sustain the company. So we were forced to start doing contract work, build other people's games, and eventually after a few games, the work dried up and we didn't have anything left to generate money. And it seemed like we were going to go out of business. Like, I actually sat everybody down. I told them, hey, we're going to go out of business. You should start looking for other jobs. But the thing was, every single person was so adamant about continuing to push forward that they convinced me to push forward as well and not give up. And I actually went and took out a personal loan for $85,000 on like the worst possible terms because I had horrible credit at the time. My company wasn't doing well and I was paying my employees before myself. So I took this huge risk. I would have lost everything if this didn't work out. And I used that money to take Breach and Clear, which we had just released on PlayStation Vita. That was a game we had built for somebody else. They actually owned all the rights in it, so we didn't make any revenue on it, but they were like, okay, you have no work right now. We'll give you the PlayStation Vita version because we don't care about it. Vita's a dead platform, whatever. And at first it seemed like they were right because the digital sales of that game were very bad. We sold like 900 copies digitally. But we felt like if we were going to go out of business, we wanted to be remembered. And the way to be remembered is to put your game out in a physical form, because that keeps your game preserved in some capacity, and it keeps it in people's memories because they'll be trading those games around. I make this point a lot, how many like Xbox 360 arcade games that have been delisted are totally forgotten at this point, but everybody still remembers the worst NES games because they exist in a cartridge form. They're still being traded. They're still being talked about because they actually exist in some physical form. But there are a lot of digital games for PS4, PS3, 360 that are delisted and completely gone, and nobody remembers them. Nobody would ever remember the developers were there. So for me, when we did this, it wasn't really about making money or starting this new big business venture. It was about preserving the legacy of our company to some degree. And it just so happened that there were a lot of other people that were frustrated about digital games and the fact that they could disappear, and they wanted to own their games. So I talked to Douglas, who was a tester at my company at the time. I've known Douglas since 6th grade. We were best friends back then, so I've known him for over 20 years at this point. We met when Gundam Wing came out on Toonami, and we bonded over that. So he came on, he started talking to collectors, and it took very little time. He just instantly found this audience for it, and when we put it on sale, it sold out in under 2 hours. And at that point, other developers started reaching out to us, and the first one that reached out to us was Oddworld, and they offered us Abe's Odyssey. To have that game come our way as like our second release, that just instantly legitimized us and helped us start talking to all these other developers and publishers, and from there just feels like it's snowballed. It's 7 years later and we've done over 1,000 different games.
What inspired the decision to launch the store? Was it overstock? Was it just wanting a place to feel like people can come in person and buy it from you guys? Like what was kind of the initial process of from start to finish of what that was for you guys?
Josh has always said, like, I want to open my own retail store. Like, I have an insane game collection of stuff that I could sell. I've always wanted to do this. That's kind of been my dream. And, kind of like at the start of the pandemic, the idea, I think, and he can take it from here, is it was like, well, we don't have to wait for that. We could do it now, and we could do it right.
I've always liked buying and selling games. I like buying them more than selling them. To be honest, I hated selling on eBay, but it was the only way to fund my game development company when I was, early on. But one of the things I kind of noticed was that, there's no game shop that like felt like the game shop from my childhood anymore. Like every game shop I went into kind of just, and I don't blame game shops for this. It's a hard business. It's tough, but most of them are just kind of like, a collection of like furniture and random stuff that they got out of like, wherever they could, which is fine. You want to maximize your margin. You want to spend a ton of money on like, a theme and an aesthetic and all this stuff in your store. So I don't know, when I saw this picture of a 90s game store show up on Twitter, it was like the Blockbuster video game store. It was like a concept store in Jacksonville, Florida. And I saw this at like the start of the pandemic, and I looked at it and I was like, this store is really cool. If I ever open a store, I want it to look like that, because it just like looked like it fell right out of the 90s. Like it was like the most like 1994, 95 looking store I've ever seen. And I was like, I want to do a store like that, because that reminds me of the stores I used to shop at as a child. And I looked at it and I thought about it for like 3 or 4 days, and I was just like, I'm just going to do it. Well, let's just do it. Let's figure it out. And we've really built it out to be thematically feel like a store from the 90s. We went with, neon, wavy neon all over the trim of the store. We've got, crazy carpet, I don't know. We just went all in with the aesthetic. We've got CRT TVs playing old commercials. We've got a custom soundtrack that was composed by the guy who did Dead Space, Jason Graves. He's done a bunch of like AAA games, so composing a store soundtrack is probably the last thing he ever expected to do.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, for sharing all your stories and your hearts with us here on Xplay. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about before I wrap things up, whether it's about limited run games, the store, anything in between?
If you're anywhere near Cary, North Carolina, come to our store. It's in McGregor Village in Cary. That's the shopping center. I don't know the address off the top of my head. I think it's 107 Edinburgh South Drive. We're on the second floor, all the way in the back of the shopping center. We're open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so drop on by.
Gerard bought 45 items during that segment.
Next, we travel further down the retro road with the new game only available on disc.
It's an idea so crazy, the devil must have made him do it.
Check out our first look at Demon Throttle right after the break.
I have a question. Am I considered a classic?
5 out of 5.
Graphics and what have you.
That's all you do in this game!
Oh.
Welcome back to Xplay.
Today, too often players scrub through a digital storefront with hundreds of games only to complain there's nothing to play.
Well, what if you wanted to play a game, but you had to get in your car or wait for a dude in short shorts to deliver it to you before you could play it?
This is the hellish future the folks behind the Demon Throttle have made a reality.
Demon Throttle is a throwback in every way, from the graphics to the physical copy of the game to how it makes you want to smoke inside next to a baby.
You know, that last part isn't actually true, but it definitely feels like a game from a time when people didn't give a shit where they smoked their cigarettes.
Gerard had a chance to catch up with the folks behind the cartridge and the game at PAX East.
Check it out.
I'm here with the team, the brilliant minds behind Demon Throttle from Doinksoft. Guys, thank you so much for your time. So you guys obviously are very passionate when you come to your projects. This game, since I've ever played it, is just beaming with charisma and charm and fun. And it just feels so on brand for what you guys do as a team. When it came to Demon Throttle, what was like the cohesion you guys had? Because I know that you sort of work, correct me if I'm wrong, you started working on this during the pandemic, right? This was like your first remote game from home as a team coming together.
We've been making video games together for a while, and we're all really good friends. So, and we all know what we like, and we like similar stuff. So a lot of times things just work. It's just like, do this, and it's like, yeah, that's sick, you know? And like, you know, charm and humor and, you know, really good feeling shit is like, we're all about, you know?
One thing I liked about the collaboration specifically was making the cutscenes happen, because like I think we've always kind of wanted to do something with that Ninja Gaiden cutscene vibe where you have the big sprites and, you know, like the illustration approach of pixel art, you know? And I thought it was fun because we got the person who did the art for the cutscenes, Morocco. He's worked on Gato Roboto with us. He worked on Devolver Bootlegs with us. And it was really cool, like, sending him a really crappy animatic made in Flash, and he comes back with these like beautifully designed pixel art. And if you look at the originals, they're so sketchy compared to what it ended up being.
So one thing you guys are really known for, at least in my opinion, is your humor is next level. Like, you guys are so freaking funny. When you're playing very few companies make me like belly laugh when I'm playing their games. And even in the intro alone, just the whole or something, just the out the gate, just sets the tone of what to expect. And even the dialogue between bosses, like, how do you go about doing that? I think I'm a funny guy. I couldn't come up with that. Like, well, what was that like for you guys?
To be honest, it is way toned down to what it originally was. Devolver was kind of like, you know, maybe we could be a little bit more subtle about this.
Yeah, Devolver very frequently says, you guys need to be a little less funny. No, they don't say that. No. They love us.
One of the first things we came up with specifically that ended up in the game was this joke, like, that demon kissed my wife.
That demon kissed my wife. Or something.
It used to be something a little different, but now it's that demon kissed my wife or something. And that was just a joke we were saying back and forth. We're like, oh, that'd be so funny if that was in an actual game. And, you know, I'm just glad we could follow through with that and have a ridiculous joke like that just be the centerpiece of a game at PAX. So it's pretty cool.
The best part about it is that it's like not the one joke, which is sets the tone for the whole game in the intro, isn't just the one joke. Like, you got when you're fighting bosses, when the characters interact, there's definitely this level of comedic cohesion that I think you guys have like followed throughout the game, which I think is really awesome.
Yeah, I think the approach was just to write bad and write silly, you know, and just like keep it fun and light, you know, and have the characters make fun of each other. So like, even though it's a tiny little sprite on screen, you feel like this character actually has an identity.
So one of the fascinating things that people at home may not know about, I know about it because I know you guys, is that this game is exclusively being released physically on Nintendo Switch. I imagine that like a lot of people are mad about that, but I think that's actually really rad that you guys are like, hey, if you want to experience our game, you can get it physically. What is that process like for you guys in Devolver Digital? Is that something that you're hesitant about, or like now that you've had time with it, it's like a really cool thing?
I think originally when I was prototyping the game, I wanted to make it into just an arcade cabinet. So when we showed them the game, just, hey, look at this other thing we're working on, Nigel pitched it to us. I'm like, that's really in line with what I wanted to do in the first place, is I want to do a physical collector's thing. I think an important thing to note, I think, is that like it isn't like a limited game. Like, we're going to have as many copies as people want to buy it. And like, we want to keep selling them forever. Like, we don't want it to be like a FOMO thing.
One thing about the physical aspect that is going to be really cool is that you get this instruction booklet and you might play the game and be like, I don't understand this or that, and you open up the instruction booklet, there's hot tips, there's a hidden cheat code in there.
I love that.
And a lot of the game mechanics are explained in the book. There's no tutorial in the game. It's just like a Nintendo game. And it's just like in an old Nintendo game, if you don't have the booklet in Star Tropics, you can't beat this one part, right?
There's something weird about buying a PS4, PS5 game, opening the case,
it's empty,
and there's a place to hold it, and inside is either like a pre-order code for another game or like DLC, but not a manual that gives you that insight. And I think that when we were kids, that insight being in the manual was so important. Like, Star Tropics is great. Earthworm Jim, you didn't know the lore of Earthworm Jim unless you read that booklet. And like, it's so important. So I think that's so rad that it's not just about the physical thing, but it's about the whole package. Guys, thank you so much for letting us play Demon Throttle. Everyone at home, you can get the game physically on Nintendo Switch. Is there a website people can go pick it up at?
DemonThrottle.com.
DemonThrottle.com. Awesome. Thank you very much.
And that's our show.
In the spirit of retro gaming, Xplay will soon be offering our complete first season on VHS.
We make each episode copy in real time with 2 VCRs.
If more than 4 people order, we are screwed.
Until we figure out a better business model, check out more content on our YouTube channel.
Which you can watch on the Xplay Zune, available as soon as we figure out if anyone is still making Zunes.
Subscribe and get fresh Xplay content in your scroll every week.
Can I interest you in an Amazon Fire Phone?
Ooh, Frost, let's just wrap it up.
Fine. Bye.
Peace.
Today on Xplay, we finally answer the question if you can suck the duck. It's our review of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Plus, we tell you what it feels like to watch a talking dog slap Batman around in our Multiverses preview. And is the Sonic 2 movie better than Sonic 1? If you're a big fan of pointless wedding scenes, then boy are you in for a treat. It's game time!
Hello and welcome to Xplay.
Before we begin today's show, I just want to respectfully remind the audience that Kirby mains are trash.
That's facts.
Now moving on.
The pink balloon monster has been messing with our Smash game for years, and he thinks he can make up for it by releasing a brand new solo Kirby title.
Nuh-uh, Putty Man. We see exactly what you're doing.
I don't know, Frost. He does look kind of cute, though.
Stay strong, TBH. Remember, he's a shape-shifting, body-snatching, really adorable tub of joy.
Can Kirby and the Forgotten Land thaw out our cold, cold hearts? Or are we just fixated on how the game seems to take place after all of humanity was wiped out?
He's wearing a little walrus hat. It's so beautiful.
Abandon hope, all ye who enters. Here's our review.
I hate him.
Everyone loves cute stuff, and some people love gross stuff. But it's a careful and precise mixture of cute and gross that have made Kirby such an iconic and enduring character, from his introduction all the way to his newest game, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. And if you're thinking that it's actually due to how delightful and relaxing his games generally are, then sure, you're probably at least a little bit right. But I think it's mostly his adorable, disgusting little balloon body. Hey everyone, and welcome to our review of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the latest game in the long-running Kirby series. Now, the big element in this game that everyone has been talking about is mouthful mode, either because they find the whole idea upsetting or delightful. And honestly, it's mostly adorable for me, I think. Okay, yeah, fine, it's both. But that's the whole contradiction at heart, right, of this series. Kirby is a cute little cartoon mascot, but also an all-consuming void from which nothing can escape. He's a classic platforming character, but instead of simply jumping on stuff, all of his gameplay is about what that mouth do. The Kirby franchise began in 1992 with Kirby's Dream Land on the Game Boy, and since then, there have been 15 more entries in the main series, plus a whole slew of spin-offs. And while some of those spin-offs have taken advantage of all three dimensions, the primary series has largely stuck to side-scrolling, until now. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is his first major full 3D adventure, which is honestly wild. Kirby 64 technically is 3D, but I think you know what I all mean. Kirby games have pretty much always been about two things: sucking up objects and launching them at enemies, or sucking up the enemies themselves in order to use their abilities. These games are super wholesome platformers that anyone can play, so it's kind of a bummer that it's impossible to describe them without sounding highly inappropriate, because Kirby's all about good, clean fun, like sucking and and all over the place. Wait, no, I said and Kirby loves to and oh, come on, these games are nice, and whoever's bleeping my voice here, it's really frustrating. You're making it sound gross. It's not me. Floating and jumping. The main thing the player will do in the game is, of course, sucking. But Kirby and the Forgotten Land has multiple modes of suckage. There are the classic copy abilities that can be gained from enemies, but now everyday human objects can also get sucked up thanks to mouthful mode, which is either the best or worst thing to happen to Kirby, depending on how the sight of Kirbified vending machines makes you feel. I should stop calling him gross, though, because these games are lighthearted and fun for the whole family, but also I don't want him to hear me. His games may be fun, but I hear Kirby's even meaner and more vindictive than Ellen DeGeneres, so if he finds out what I said, he might... Oh no. What's that sound? No. No! 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 Oh! Oh God! Why am I so wet in here? Oh! Oh. Oh no. I'm inside Kirby. All right, I'm gonna ignore how gross it is in here because I truly do find Kirby in the Forgotten Land to be just as fun and chill as I generally expect a Kirby game to be. You can definitely feel the influence from something like Mario Odyssey, but even though it's structurally different, it's still decidedly Kirby. The story is as simple as you'd expect, and somehow simultaneously super weird. After getting sucked through a vortex, Kirby winds up in an abandoned world full of human stuff like cars and traffic cones. But no actual humans. Instead, there's the Beast Pack, a group of sinister yet adorable animals who have abducted the Waddle Dees. So, Kirby has to find them, defeat the Beast Pack, and help the Waddle Dees rebuild Waddle Dee Town. There's a real satisfaction to be found just from watching those brave little Waddle Dees rebuild their town. I was genuinely so proud of them. But also, it's cool that the Waddle Dees are the game's main collectible, with several hidden Waddle Dees in every level, as well as a list of level-specific objectives that rescue even more of them. The structure of the game feels super familiar, but also new because it's Kirby. And anyways, the sort of things that I would hold against other games are sort of rendered moot by that very same fact. The general size and linear nature of the levels, for instance. They're pretty streamlined compared to something like the Mario titles, but the designs are still really good, and the breezy nature of it all just screams Kirby, so it's fine. Or the fact that the game is super easy, even on its harder difficulty, but like, yo, it's Kirby, of course it's easy, leave him alone! He's just trying to eat stuff! The difficulty steps it up a bit in the last world or two, but the post-game was so much more robust than I was expecting it to be. But for the most part, this is a great gateway game, and I bet that kids who discover Kirby for the very first time through Forgotten Land are gonna lose their minds. Do I wish it was harder? Sure, because I like difficult games that have challenge to them, but it feels like a weird thing to demand of Kirby. It's fine to be bummed that it's not a bit harder, but would be weird to be surprised by that fact. And speaking of surprises, don't be freaked out, but I think there's someone else stuck inside of Kirby here with me. Hello? Hello, is anyone there?
Oh, yeah. Hey, what's up, man?
Oh, shit, Zipper! One of our producers here at Xplay. But you know, now that I think about it, it makes sense why I haven't seen you in a while.
Oh, yeah. I've been working remote here inside Kirby for the last few months. The Wi-Fi is, like, shockingly good.
Did you say a few months?
Yeah. Kirby absorbed me and took my powers. Why did you think he looks so much more Jewish now?
I'm not even gonna touch that.
Just be glad that it's this and you didn't get mouthful moded, because that would not have been pretty. Actually, look, like this.
Why do you have a drawing of that? I don't want to know. That's fine. But this does bring me to my next point, so thank you for bringing up mouthful mode, I guess.
Yeah, man. Happy to help. Make yourself at home. Me Kirby as Sue Kirby.
Zipper's right, you know, about mouthful mode. It's sort of unsettling, but that's what's fun about it. Now, the main thing I found disappointing about it is that it felt like the game needed a few more additional mouthful modes to make it feel genuinely transformative. As is, it's applied really inconsistently, and it feels like each mode only gets one or two standout moments at most. Some of them feel more like mini-games, like the car racing sequences or the gliding levels, but again, they're sort of quick and disposable. It's fine that mouthful mode is mostly used for solving environmental puzzles, but as the big hook of the game, I was hoping it would be utilized way more. But as new and exciting as sucking up objects is, the real joy still comes from the same place as in every other Kirby game. Sucking up enemies and stealing their powers. Sucking up the enemies is great, but similar to mouthful mode, I wanted more of the copy abilities. In general though, I really like the overall way that they work in this game. You can find blueprints hidden throughout the levels, which a Waddle Dee can then use to upgrade to unlock new versions of the abilities. It makes them feel more well-rounded and balances out how relatively few of them there are, because at least they're scaling up in a very cool way. So even if there were a couple of powers that were my go-to for most situations, like the fire ability or the later evolutions of the sword ability, I still found myself wanting to switch up the vibe. And the copy shop is just one of the many delightful things about Waddle Dee Town, which is a pretty small zone to be honest, but packs a lot of fun stuff in it, like an arena for a boss rush fun time, some mini games, an adorable little house where Kirby can take a nap. He's so cute. Like every other element of the game, it was perfectly delightful, and I just wanted more of that. And honestly, when your main complaint with the game is that you wanted more of all the stuff that it's doing, That's a pretty good sign you got a good game on your hands. Kirby and the Forgotten Land doesn't quite meet the bar of some of its influences like Mario Odyssey, but it doesn't really have to. All it needs to do is stick the landing that it's trying to do with its mouthful mode and the power-ups while still feeling distinctly like a Kirby game, and that's exactly what it does. Because to me, one of the main things that defines a Kirby game is that literally anyone can pick it up and play, which is easier to do with a side-scroller than with something more sprawling like this. But I think this game really pulls off that balance, even if it could have gone a little bit harder on some of its central ideas. Kirby has exactly as much appeal as he's always had. And if I wanted a few more features or the ones we got to be a little more well-rounded, I truly believe that literally anyone can pick up this game and have a pretty damn good time, which is why Kirby and the Forgotten Land gets a 4 out of 5.
Well, we managed to get all the way through an entire segment about Kirby without talking about his hideous human feet that he hides in his shoes.
Right? It makes you afraid to go to the wiki feet.
I'm just glad that for once we don't have to think about his giant, girthy, veiny, pink toes.
I know. Look how disturbing it is.
Now we have to reset the giant factory sign to 0 days without having to see Kirby's gross people feet.
We've got a lot more show right after this, so kick off your shoes and relax.
Damn it. Welcome back to Xplay.
Multiverses is Warner Brothers' solution to Smash Brothers, a new fighting game franchise that brings together all sorts of different properties across the studio.
Like Batman taking on Velma from Scooby-Doo.
It's weird, but it also could be great.
We'll get to see who wins and who loses when Multiverses officially releases later this summer. But in the meantime, we got some time in the ring.
Check out our preview of Multiverses. Last week, we were able to play the closed alpha for Multiverses. Join me to discuss his thoughts and my thoughts as well is the Black Hokage. Corey, how's it going?
It's always a pleasure to join you and have some conversations about video games. It's always going to be a fun time, which, by the way, this is a very fun game.
Oh man, we have to go out the gate because I think this was a dark horse for a lot of people. I think they saw this game and they were like, I don't know if it's going to be good. They had high hopes, and then we got this closed alpha, and I don't know about you, I'm pretty impressed. It feels very fun. Feels very faithful to that of the party brawler. It felt like, so far, it feels like everything that Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl should have been, and that's just kind of me spitting those hot takes out the gate.
Yeah, I agree. I was really disappointed with Nickelodeon, so I was kind of coming into this thinking like, I'm gonna keep my eye on it, but I'm not gonna get high hopes. But I'm pleasantly surprised. Obviously, this game is inspired by Smash Bros. By being a party brawler, but I would actually say this game is closer to a more traditional fighter than actual a party brawler. It's somewhere in between, like a happy medium, because the mechanics are so much more deeper, and because of that, I've actually really been enjoying it. You have to be a little bit more precise with the way you throw your attacks out. Once I understood that, and then I also understood that it plays better. The game is set up more to be a 2v2 game versus a 1v1. Once I understood that and kind of the mechanics, how you can set characters up to basically like certain moves have certain types of stuns, and then you want to come in with your teammate and they can finish that ability for you. I was like, oh wow. I was like, I could see why this got picked up at Evo, and I could see if you get a chance to play this game, without a doubt, the best way to play it is 2v2 because there's so many mechanics in place. Like I remember I was in the middle of combat, and then I was getting beat up by the two people on the other team. And then one of my teammate, he was playing Wonder Woman, and he pulled me back out of the fight. And I said, oh, I got it. It allowed me, gave me a second to breathe, to reset, and then we went in and we were able to fight, and then we actually ended up winning that fight. So it was like there's a lot of simple mechanics there that it's enough here that it's different.
Recovering is a lot more accessible if you get knocked off the stage. In Smash Brothers, you're playing against a pro or two or your friends who are better than you. They will not let you come back to the arena. But in Multiverses, coming back is so simple. And it doesn't feel like a chore. It feels like, okay, I took my hit, I took my blows, it's a break. Now how am I going to figure out a way to re-engage in combat?
It's also really rewarding, too, because not a single character on the roster in that alpha had a bad stage recovery. And because you can latch onto the side of the wall and just wall jump up, it becomes a cat and mouse game with your opponent where you have to try to bait them and you can pull the switcheroo on them. So I really like that element. I feel like that's different from Smash. I like that there's a perk system in the game, so it allows you to build up your characters how you see fit. And also the progression system, it wasn't too bad. Basically, each character that you play, the more you play them, the character will level up, and you'll start to unlock different types of perks and abilities, and you can put 3 perks to each character, and it can really change the game. So everybody's Shaggy is not going to be exactly the same. It's little quality of life things that I really like in there, like when you're loading into the game, you can practice whatever character you see fit. I mean, you see that in more traditional fighters. It was dope to see that. And then also I just like the fact that the pacing on this game is really, even though it's floatier, it's faster because you can't block in this game. There's no shields. There is a dodge roll, but what's really cool about that is the more that you utilize it, the less effective it becomes. So it forces you to fight the other team. Couple more things before we wrap this one up.
Yeah.
One positive that I do like about this is, from my understanding, it has rollback netcode. Like I was really impressed by that. I hopped online and there was one game where it was really slight jittery, but I played for like a 3-hour session. It was one game that lagged. For the most part, this game runs buttery smooth, and I was actually really impressed. I was like, this is an alpha. I was like, this felt almost finished. It felt like a labor of love. Like they actually cared to get this right, and that's once again why I think it's actually going to show up at Evo. They're really gunning. And then 2, one negative that I have about it is some characters' moves, I noticed they do take priority over others, specifically Taz. He is broken right now. That little spin move he does, it takes priority over everything. So it's like, focus a little bit more on that balancing too if you do want to hop into that competitive scene. But I think what they have here, this foundation, it's good. I also like the fact that they're on record saying that this will not be a pay-to-win game. The only thing that you can buy is skins. So like everything is unlockable. It's very quick as long as you play the game. I'm liking what I'm seeing. I think there's potential here. Is this the Smash killer? I think they can coexist. I don't understand why people don't understand that things can coexist.
The conversation of a Smash killer is no longer needed. There's everyone, everyone's in Fortnite. Spider-Man can hit Batman. Who cares?
Yeah.
The crazy thing that I will say is that looking at the leaked roster, 2 things. One, there's rumors based on the data files that Naruto will be a playable character, as well as Wreck-It Ralph, which is crazy because this is really starting to. I think that the Chip and Dale movie has taught us that anyone can show up anywhere nowadays, and it totally is fine. But the thing that is most fascinating about this game, in my opinion, is the art style and the choices of art style for each franchise. Because if you look at the characters from Steven Universe or Adventure Time or even Scooby-Doo and Batman, they all look very much on brand, on model. But then you look at things like Wonder Woman or Arya Stark, and they look like Fortnite versions of themselves and not so much the art style. So that's that. I mean, granted, how are you going to put Arya Stark in the game, right? She's a realistic
I was gonna say, what's the
character.
solution? Yeah.
What's the solution there? And I feel like because of the art style that Fortnite has brought to the table, like the simplistic kind of Pixar look for humans, I feel like that is going to kind of vary depending on who they're getting in this, because they're saying in the data mine that Neo from the Matrix will be in this. Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, like these are I mean, obviously these are fandom and films, but like we have an iconic look because they're played by these famous actors, and how that's going to translate, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I think as long as they lean into the comedic side of things, it'll be okay. And that actually goes to like my other point too. I didn't know how much like voice acting mattered until Nickelodeon came out, basically.
Totally.
But it's in this game, and like not only is the voice acting good in this game because it's played by all the original people, but once again it feels like a labor of love because the characters interact with one another.
Yeah,
I remember there was at one point where I was playing as what's the dog from Adventure Time's name? I never watched it. Jake, the yellow dog. I was playing as him, and he like transforms into like a horse at one point, like in one of his attacks, and then like Batman's like, I can't believe I'm getting beat by a transforming dog with a horse. Like just those one little quips or whatever, it made me laugh, and I was like, I really like that. I really like that.
The first thing I did when I played is I played as Batman, and I was fighting Shaggy, and I punched Shaggy, and Batman just goes hippie, and it was like the weirdest thing because a few months later, like Shaggy was like, well, that's not very nice, Batman, and you're like, whoa, like these characters have banter, they have chemistry, which is it's the nuances, right? Like in Smash, we didn't really get that. Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl, definitely we didn't get that. So it's fun to kind of see that kind of brought to the forefront, especially because we have all the actors. Well, we're out of time, but thank you, Corey, for joining me to talk more about Multiverses. You have some time to wait before the Iron Giant stomps on Bugs Bunny.
But you can watch Sonic the Hedgehog 2 right now, assuming you have a Paramount Plus subscription.
Which we know you do, probably.
Yep.
At least until you remember to unsubscribe now that the Halo TV series is over.
Don't click over to Paramount Plus just yet, though. Wait through these commercials, and we'll tell you if Sonic 2 is worth it.
Don't go anywhere.
I didn't realize there would be actual applause.
Yes!
Life-changing.
That's all you do in this game. Graphics and what have you. Marvel Spider-Man by Insomniac Games gets a 5 out of 5.
So I have a question. Am I considered a classic?
Zelda!
Oh.
Welcome back to Xplay.
Sonic 2 is the follow-up to the surprise hit Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
But this time, there's 100% more Echidna, voiced by Idris Elba.
If that didn't make you want to instantly click over, then check out our review.
As the tune in the title suggests, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a sequel to 2020 Sonic the Hedgehog. While the initial trailers didn't exactly build faith in the first movie, like everyone kind of knew based on those awful teeth, the actual film wound up being a very exciting, funny, and heartfelt take on the blue blur. For a lot of us, Sonic was one of the last movies we saw in theaters before we got plunged into the waking nightmare of the last 2 years. And in those last 2 years, the warm feelings have only grown for the original, with many considering it to be one of, if not the best movie based on a video game film. So, does Sonic 2 live up to the standard set by the first one? Well, yes, but it doesn't do much to surpass it. At the very least, it meets the same bar that was established from Sonic 1. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 opens where the original ended, with Eggman stuck on a mushroom planet, plotting his revenge against Sonic. He eventually makes his escape, teams up with Knuckles the Echidna to capture the Master Emerald in hopes to bring Earth to its knees and defeat Sonic in the process. Meanwhile, Tails is somehow aware that shenanigans are afoot because of radioactive waves in space and journeys to Earth to warn Sonic. Meanwhile, Tom and Maddie, Sonic's now adoptive parents, are in Hawaii for Maddie's sister's wedding. There's a lot of plot happening in this movie, and not all of it works. In fact, a lot of it doesn't work. The wedding subplot gives a big, we don't know what to do with the human characters, so let's just throw them to the side until the third act kind of vibe. The wedding subplot eventually leads to some fun gags, but it also results in some plot developments that really don't make a whole lot of sense. In fact, the plotting is easily the weakest part of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. A lot of things happen either through convenience or coincidence, and the movie expects you to just kind of go along with it. Look, I get that this movie is primarily aimed at kids, but some of the leaps of logic are glaring if you think about it way too hard. The humor from the first film returns quite literally in a few instances. And it's not like a new setup for the gag either, it's more or less the same gag from the first film. You guys like flossing in Fortnite? Here we go, it's back again. Lastly, on the negatives, the score is very underwhelming. One of the consistent highlights of the Sonic games is the music, and I would have loved a more propulsive electronic score that incorporated some of the best themes from the OG games, Sonic Mania, even Sonic Adventure in the more modern games. The fact that Knuckles doesn't pull up to the Pumpkin Hill rap is damn near unforgivable. Now, despite all these flaws, it sounds like I hated the movie. I didn't. Sonic 2 is still a really, really fun film with a massive heart. The growing bond between Sonic and Tails is a joy to watch. There were a few moments that will warm even the coldest of hearts. It's really cool to see Sonic and Tails on a grand scale adventure, and the moments focused on their race for the Master Emerald are easily the strongest about the film. I have to give a massive shout out to Colleen O'Shaughnessy for yet another opportunity to kill it as Tails. Ben Schwartz is still perfect as Sonic, though I'm still kind of lukewarm and up in the air about Idris Elba as Knuckles, and I don't know if it's Alba's performance so much as it's the way they've characterized Knuckles. Knuckles is very much ripped from the same cloth of Drax and King Shark. He's simple, with many of the jokes derived from his confusion about how the modern world works, and his hyperliteral nature attached to that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's kind of weird. I think part of the issue is that all three of them are supposed to be children, but Knuckles just feels like a grown-ass man. The movie has quite a few nods to the games. The set design of the Emerald-related areas are fantastic and really feel pulled from the games. The action manages to thread the needle of being exciting to watch, but never so violent that younger viewers can't handle it. The inevitable third act showdown is a straight-up blast, and is where most of the fan-centric moments come into play. Ultimately, though, my feeling about the film kind of boils down to this. This movie needs a lot less of the human elements and needs a lot more of the Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Stone, and Eggman environment. I hate to say it, but the wedding plot line with James and all that stuff just kind of feels like another film just came into the middle of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. When the Sonic of it all is in full force, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 sings. The jokes are fun, the action is very exciting and nostalgic, and there's a genuine sweetness to it all that I found very endearing. It's a fun movie that's ultimately held back by weak subplots and over-reliance on coincidence and being a little too similar to the first film. That's why, for our very first movie review right here on Xplay, we're giving Sonic the Hedgehog 2 3 rings out of 5.
I cannot believe that the original ugly Sonic design is now a fan favorite after appearing in the Chippendale movie.
Thank you for watching Xplay, the original Sonic design of game review shows.
We've got our new episodes every week, plus additional content on our YouTube channel all the time.
And if you like what you see or just looking for new pockets of printed tees to mine, check out the Xplay merch store.
Shop.g4tv.com will get you there.
We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Today on Xplay, the Game Grumps reveal their new game, and when Dan learns it exists, it's gonna scare the crap out of him. Plus, we take an in-depth look at Dream Daddy. It's a heartwarming dating sim that teaches you there are no wrong choices in love. Except for Joseph, Brian, Damien, Robert, Craig, and Matt. You heard me. Hugo for life. It's game time.
Hello and welcome to Xplay.
Today we're teaming up with the Game Grumps to reveal their brand new game.
Here's a tease. Someone in a mask won't stop stalking you. There's a giant hot dog sign and it's scary as f***.
This is the third game the Game Grumps have released.
And if you're surprised it's a creepy stabby game, you're not really alone.
Because their first title is about as far from existential dread as possible.
Unless you suffer from existential dread every time you're getting ready for a date.
In which case, we understand.
But why face dating in real life when you can date from the safety of a heavily structured narrative?
Here's a look back at the phenomenon known as Dream Daddy.
And then stabby later.
Father's Day 2017 was a Father's Day like any other. Loved ones handed out Lowe's gift cards and barbecue utensil sets by the thousands, and millions of kids presented shoddily made artwork that would never hang in a museum. Thank God we also got Dream Daddy. Dream Daddy was a riff on the classic dating simulator game genre. It was also all about daddies. And also daddies. The player created a single dad character who woos other single dads. You are recently a widower dad of a teenage daughter who's moved into a cul-de-sac with a hot dad behind every door. And that door first opened at Disneyland. Writers Leighton Gray and Vernon Shaw were making a pilgrimage to the House of Mouse when lightning struck. Leighton's recent playthrough of Huddable Boyfriend, which is a dating pigeon simulator game, and a scrolling session of the Dilfs of Disneyland Instagram account, and yes, that is an actual real thing, you can look it up, sparked an idea. A dating sim devoted to trying to bag impossibly hot dads. Leighton and Vernon zeroed in pretty quickly on each of the 7 dad types they wanted to feature, from the burly bro to the cool youth pastor. Dream Daddy didn't start out as an explicitly queer story. Originally, it was an idea for anyone who would want to date a smoke show with kids, but they soon narrowed the focus towards an unassuming, warm-hearted queer story about queer characters. Leighton and Vernon then pitched the idea to Aaron Hansen and Brent Lilly at the Game Grumps. Aaron Hansen's sincere hope was that the Game Grumps could be more than a YouTube hub for creator content, but a space where people could pursue all sorts of things that were creatively exciting to them. A dating sim where you date other dads was an instant yes. The goal was to get the game out in time for Father's Day of the following year, which would then give the entire development cycle barely a year. Leighton, Vernon, and the Game Grumps organization had never created a game before, so they hit the ground running. A few key folks with game development experience were brought on board, notably Jory Griffiths, the narrative designer. The game required a massive amount of script copy, totaling more than 130,000 words. The dating sim format was pretty straightforward, but iterating on the design with so few people to move the pieces was going to take way too long if they had any hope of hitting the Father's Day deadline. Along the way, the writers fought to make every character compelling and layered, adding a dash of social anxiety to the effortlessly cool dad, or an edge over competitiveness to the sweet outdoorsman. Up until only a couple of months before launch, the team really was only 5 people, and then it was panic time. The deadline loomed, and true to the vision, the Game Grumps channel revealed Dream Daddy to the world on Father's Day 2017. The community responded immediately, and the game gathered heat as players got sneak peeks at what was to come from a select group of content creators streaming Dream Daddy. The team was writing up until the day of release. They were making changes based on feedback from preview streams just a couple of days before launch, and one important addition to the last second was the inclusion of binder options in the character creator. The game already featured a trans character in a role where his gender identity wasn't the focus of his story, and this was a welcome effort to widen the options for every kind of player experience. Finally, the game was ready, and players were free to roam Maple Bay looking for dad bods. There was already buzz around Dream Daddy in the indie circles, but the team wasn't ready for what happened next. The game rocketed into Steam's top 10 bestsellers within the first week. It was a favorite of big-name streamers, and everyone online seemed to be talking about it. In fact, it became the most talked-about game on Tumblr, knocking Overwatch off that lofty perch. What's Tumblr, you say? Don't worry about it. If you know, you know, and you're probably old enough to have children, so that fits. Outlets like Wired called it not only the best dating sim they'd ever played, but one of the best games of that year. Dream Daddy would then expand to mobile and eventually the Nintendo Switch, which started as a tongue-in-cheek nod to the familiar tropes of the dating sim genre, had grown into a bona fide hit. The attention to character and story is what made Dream Daddy stand out, and under the humor was a gooey, heartfelt center. We can't wait to see what the team at Game Grumps comes up with next.
Now enough of this squishy emotion talk. I want classic suspense horror.
Stick around after this quick break for an exclusive reveal of the Game Grumps' new title.
Pride's beginning is legendary. It fueled an entire movement. A turn from ignorance to education, silence to visibility. All of our voices heard as one. Pride is universal. Better together.
Welcome back to Xplay.
I don't want to spoil a trailer right before we're about to premiere it, but if you own any Criterion collection of any David Lynch movie, I'm going to need you to sit down and watch the next 75 seconds with total focus.
Does scrolling past the Twin Peaks series on Showtime then deciding to play Sifu instead count?
Sure. You'll still dig it.
Nice. I was sweating to check out the exclusive reveal of Homebody.
Holy crap. That was the first ever trailer reveal of Homebody, the new game from Game Grumps and Rogue Games Incorporated. First of all, guys, thank you again for joining me. How does it feel to finally show this game to the world?
I'm so thrilled about it, and thank you for having us. This is a crazy honor. And no, the positivity, there's clapping happening in the room. What a thrill this is. Yeah, I'm going out of my mind. Been thinking about and working on this game for a really long time with a talented group of people and the lovely support of the people from Game Grumps. So it's huge to be here talking about it. I'm having an out of body experience right now.
How about you, Aaron? How are you feeling?
It's pretty amazing to see like all of it together and knowing that like a bunch of people are watching it right now, like because every moment of development for this game has just been like me huddling over Jory's laptop like, whoa, that looks cool. I can't wait till people see this. And now people are seeing this. So
He's
this
not
is
kidding.
really amazing.
That's actually the support is that direct and that clear. Just like, wow, this looks great. Oh, thank you, buddy.
So you guys told this is the first time I've seen anything of the game. When I at your guys' old office, I showed up. I think Dream Daddy was you guys were finishing the DLC for Dream Daddy, and you were in the corner working on this, and you were very much like, Gerard, come here. Wait, don't come here. Wait, come here. No, don't come here. Wait, come here. No, don't come here. So I have known absolutely nothing about this. So the trailer was very intriguing. I got chills. It gave me that early horror like trailer vibes from like the 80s and 90s. So let's just jump into it. What is Homebody?
Homebody is a survival horror puzzle game. It's a non-combat driven horror game, so we're thinking a lot about some of the classics like Clock Tower on the Super Famicom and on the PlayStation. So it's all about avoiding a single unstoppable enemy and solving puzzles that get you through the environment. There's a lot of kind of mechanical and narrative twists in there that we're not ready to talk about yet because they're sort of wrapped into the mystery of the story. But one of the things that I think really stands out about the game is that in a lot of games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill, where there's puzzles and things like that gate your progress, when you click on a puzzle and start to interact with it, you sort of fade out and fade back into this like sense of safety while you're working on the puzzle. And in this game, there's always a monster with a knife coming to kill you, even while you're focusing on things like that. And so the player has to kind of keep their guard up and watch for audio-visual cues to let them know that a monster is coming for them. And I think it's like a very unique thing that sort of transforms the whole experience of.
So is the vibe like as you're solving these puzzles, you just have this ambient fear all the time that this thing is about to get you?
Right, that's the goal. Yeah. So it takes place in a really small, closed environment. It's got a vibe that feels a lot like a slasher movie or something, where you're in a small little cabin in the middle of nowhere with a small group of your friends, and all of a sudden the lights go out and a monster comes and starts to kill you. And we're sort of building from there in terms of like, the player's going to learn a lot of things about what this world actually is, what this thing with the knife actually is, what the character's relationship with her friends actually is, and it's kind of complicated from there. But
the fact that you guys have chosen no combat is such a fascinating take, because it feels like nowadays everything has a little bit of combat, or like you're running in Dread and then there is combat or there's an action sequence. But it seems like you guys are really going in on the puzzle aspect of getting out of this, almost like a panic escape room, if you will.
Yeah, totally. There's a real vibe of that. Well, and I think in general, too, that like people talk more than anything with like Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 2 remake, and Resident Evil Village. Like games like that, I think people are more excited about the big unstoppable things like Mr. X and Jack from 7 or Lady D from 8, where it is like the excitement of like there is nothing you're truly powerless and you just need to run. Kind of the same with like Alien Isolation, where the alien is just an uncontrollable, unpreventable thing. That's what we're going for.
Aaron, I'm going to ask you a more abstract question. What is Homebody to you specifically?
Well, that's a tough question to answer because it's a lot of things to me, not the least of which is that it's an opportunity for my very talented friend Jory to finally stretch his creative wings, which is so amazing to watch and has been amazing through this whole process. Like one of the things I love specifically creatively about Jory is that all of his concepts and ideas are so like visceral. I mean, I've had such long conversations with Jory about how like light looks on a wall from a lamp. Like it's just like that kind of thinking about like how something affects your brain, or specifically his vision, is just so wonderful and intriguing, and it's the kind of brain that should be making games like this.
Wow.
What a lovely compliment. I didn't think we were going to go there, but what a great vibe. So there's so many different genres to choose from when you're telling a story through games, obviously. What specifically kind of gravitated you guys towards survival horror versus, another Dream Daddy or a different type of a kart racer or whatever it may be?
Right. I think that horror in movies and in games, I think what's so appealing about it is that it puts metaphor and theme up front, but you don't really notice it or think about it too much because you're too busy stressing out about some other unknowable thing. And I think it's just a really clean and direct way to get a message and talk about story values and themes and stuff. And so building a survival horror game that has sort of an unconventional narrative structure and unique new ways of interacting with puzzles and things like that was just something we were really excited to do because I feel like there's a lot of space that hasn't been explored in terms of like, it's a horror game, but it has this sort of story that pushes a little more into the space of like a visual novel or something like that, or interactive fiction where there's a lot of choices that have to do with themes that are personal and related to the characters in the story, and kind of spinning all of that together into the sort of, I'm loath to say like lore, but the players will find out the way that the world is sort of built to support those metaphors, and that's what I was really excited to play with.
The thing that is fascinating as you're talking about this is the art style that you guys have chosen to go with, right? Because obviously you could have really gone towards the hyper-realistic style. You could have gone like 8-bit, 16-bit side-scrolling, or even more like PlayStation 1 DMake-esque. It feels like you guys really, just looking at the screenshots in the trailer, you guys specifically chose an art style that seems very different than the more conventional horror game that you'd play on something like itch.io or Steam.
Right. Yeah. I really love the vibe of a lot of those games. There is sort of a moment happening of those like PlayStation retro horror haunted games. And I think it was really important to me for the vibe of the game to feel sort of unspecifically nostalgic and out of time. Like, in addition to like the PlayStation classics like Clock Tower and Silent Hill 1 that we're obsessed with, I also, there's a lot of DOS games that are really important to me. Like the original Alone in the Dark is a big visual influence on the game, and so is like Another World, for example. So getting some of that stuff in there of these like sort of blocky, solid colors, but then also a lot of I'm a big dithering head. I'm all about it. So having that be like a big part of the game's identity was really important to me. I think there's just like something I really wanted to play with of like the sense that we've got these like high resolution shadows that feel very out of place in a game that looks this retro. We've got some post effects that feel a little fancier than the player might expect. In a way, it's sort of trying to create this feeling that like this is the real world viewed through this like sort of nostalgic filter. And that's kind of tied into the themes of the game too.
Don't go anywhere. We're squeezing even more exclusive goodies out of Aaron and Jory right after the break.
And if we squeeze too hard, we fail this run and the time loop starts all over again.
Yeah, don't go anywhere.
Hello and welcome to another episode of GeForce Crash Course.
Leads the first cleanly has. Nexus round for G2. They can't let it slip. Oh no. They're letting it slip. Okay.
Welcome back to Xplay.
The Game Grumps just announced a new spoopy horror game called Homebody.
It's moody, it's scary, it's up next.
You should check it out.
From the beginning, after Dream Daddy wrapped, I mean, the people at Grumps, Aaron and Brent, were just like super proactive about, like, they saw this game I was working on, and I pitched it to them, and they were just so supportive and excited from the beginning. And since then, we've got the support of the amazing people at our publisher, Rogue Games, who are just awesome and have been such great partners on it. And then, yeah, I mean, we have a team of people that have just been absolutely slaying it. I've been so excited about it. And as I say this, I'm pulling out the Notes app because I wanted to say real quick, Leighton, Alex, Sherilyn, Ian, John, Jacinta, Wayne, Emma, Nico, Greg, and Mark have all been killing it. So, yay! Give them adulation. Woo! Layer in post effects of applause. How exciting is this?
Applause.
It's happening. Well, Aaron, what did you see? Aside from knowing Jory, what to you made Homebody so exciting for you to want to go, hey, you and Brent just were immediately like, let's do this.
Well, the core idea, first of all, was super fascinating to me, and I don't know. Jory's been a little what's the word?
I'm being a coy boy.
Yeah, you're being very coy about like what the game is sort of about. Which is great because it kind of adds to the mystery of it, but it's the core concept of like what the game is and is. Wait, you're just saying I can go nuts about what the core idea is?
I mean, you're the EP, my man. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, but you're the creative boy. I don't want to go against your idea. But it's very cerebral. I'll say that. It explores a concept that I've always been fascinated by, which is. Can I use the T word?
Yes, please.
Okay. It's a time loop.
Sorry.
No, I'm glad that just happened.
That's very exciting.
I love time games.
Yes, it's fantastic. And I think it has a very unique spin on the time loop concept because especially with like the killer being involved and all these different characters that you interact with. There's a lot of things that you sort of learn about the loop itself that I think is super, super fascinating and also has a lot of implications on what the character is experiencing and their sort of backstory. So I loved that idea from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think the whole sense of the game being this sort of time loop, being like this sort of nostalgic exploration about the way we think about the past and all that, it's really important to me. And having the aesthetic be married to those narrative values is something I'm super psyched about.
I actually have a personal question I would like to ask real quick, especially with horror games. Making an iconic, terrifying like hunter killer is such a big important aspect. What went into the design of this character, because they are already completely unsettling?
That's so great. I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, a lot of design stuff went back and forth with my ideas and Aaron's, and then the amazing 2D artist that we've worked with, John, who designed the killer in the game. One of the main values from the bottom, I mean, without getting into spoiler country on the specifics of what it is, we really wanted to focus on making it uncanny. Like, which sort of, I mean, actually has a little interplay with the visuals, like that sense Aaron was talking about, that like you can't really focus or adjust your eyes on what you're seeing. The killer is sort of designed to do the same thing, where it's like almost a friendly face at times and sort of creating this sense that what is this thing? Who is this person wearing this mask? Is this a mask? There's a lot going on there that I'm excited for people to find out about.
Ooh, yes. Thank you. Oh,
heck yeah.
So good. So speaking of spoopy, from Twitch, we have Disassembled JJ. About how spoopy will it be? I guess on a spoopy scale of 1 not so spoopy, 10 super spoopy.
I've never thought about it in those terms before.
That is interesting, huh?
I mean, it's not constant jump scares spoopy.
Okay.
But it might be more emotional, psychological, disturbing spoopy than some spoopy games.
This one comes from Third Rate Minion on Twitch. What kind of went behind the music design for the game?
Well, I mean, the game is all about kind of create this like, there's not as much of like a total Friday the 13th, or Psycho kind of type of shocking. Our audio is all about trying to create like mood and atmosphere and using ambience to create like an unsettling feeling of like what is and isn't like real and what is and isn't safe.
Yeah.
And the music in the trailer is by a band that I like called Solo Andata, who I think in general I got very, very obsessed with like dark ambient music while I was coming up with the concept of the game and while I've been writing it. Generally just like creating bad vibes. Is that enough to say?
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, when we saw the trailer for the first time, the first thing I noticed immediately was like, whoa, the design looks really cool, but like the sound design, like sound is so important. It's so underplayed in a lot, I feel like, in games and films. Oh, already right there playing it back for us. You already know how uncomfortable it is, right? It's like taking like a pick and slowly scraping a guitar, just like very, very unsettling, which I think is the vibe you guys are going for.
Yeah, so and unsettling, and then sort of gradually deepening the sense. I remember Aaron talking about how one of the things he's most afraid of is, am I right about this, Aaron? It's a single dull tone that just gets louder and louder without ever changing pitch. Is that exactly what it was?
That's correct, yeah.
And I sort of do love that sense of like the fundamental mounting wrongness. It's not getting more intensely scary. Just the level of it is just surrounding you more and more. That's the audio experience that we want.
Oh,
this is going to be nuts.
I'm so excited. What was the jump like going from creating a dating sim to then doing a third-person horror game?
I mean, without the people on my team who have been instrumental at creating some of the systems that go into making this big, complex 3D puzzle game, I would have been very lost. So I'm very appreciative to those people. In general, yeah, I think that like something that I am really excited about with Homebody is that we're kind of Leighton, co-creator, Dream Daddy, is co-writing the game with me, and some of the same narrative and character sort of emotionally driven values that made Dream Daddy so appealing to people are stuff that we're really trying to hold on to in this game, or even though it's very mechanically and narratively and thematically different, I want it to feel kind of resonant in the same way.
Okay, 2 quick questions real quick. Gerard, will you be completing this game?
Probably.
I take it as a
yes. I play all the games my friends make because I love my friends and they make good stuff. I loved Dream Daddy. I didn't make a video on Dream Daddy because I felt like everyone else made their videos for me, and I was like, I have nothing to add to this conversation.
It's a good point, actually.
Yeah. But I'm definitely going to play this for sure. I'm really excited, especially because I know it means so much to you, and I know your journey. It's very exciting stuff.
Thanks, Gerard.
Finally, last question. Will you be playing this on Game Grumps on YouTube?
You know, because Dan's not. I mean, he's seen bits and pieces or whatever, but so this will kind of be like a surprise for him. So maybe exposing him to it could be pretty interesting.
I do, yeah. That's a great point. I think there's a lot of things about the game that are up Dan's alley, and Dan is also not good at horror games, so maybe that would turn out great.
That's our show. Thank you so much for watching.
If you're having trouble sleeping, either from the creep level of Homebody or because you just pounded a liter of energy drink, check out our YouTube channel.
We upload new reviews and deep dives all the time. All the time.
Give us a subscribe if you like what you see, and we'll see you next time.
All the time.
Peace.
All the time.
All the time.
Hello and welcome to G4's feature presentation of the Rocket League Championship Series Fall Major Grand Finals. I'm Golden Boy, and that was a mouthful. And today, we're partnering with Psyonix to bring you one of the biggest Rocket League events of the year. So what is Rocket League? For the sake of you all watching at home, I'm going to call it car soccer, a game in which you take control of a vehicle and try to put a ball in the back of your opponent's net. It's a technical game with fast-paced gameplay that requires a high level of dexterity. Anyone who has seen a soccer match before should have the basic understanding of the concept. Rocket League is played as 3 versus 3, with players starting on opposing sides of the pitch and the ball starting in the middle. You score by hitting the ball into your opponent's goal, and to help them do that, players collect boosts that allow them to temporarily fly through the air and perform aerial maneuvers, which is where the rocket part comes in the league. Get it? At the end of the match, the team with the most goals wins. It's simple to understand, but that doesn't mean there isn't a lot of complexity and skill expression in the game, which is something that you'll learn by sticking with us as we get into the action of the RLCS Fall Major Grand Final. It's one of the 4 big international tournaments of the year, the others being the Spring and Winter Majors, and